school. I know all the biblical stories. You don't have to tell me anything. Just disciple all those doctors. Don't include me anyway. I already knew those things. I'm a Christian already. But you know what? He's so persistent, and he told me, and when I came across with this passage, this is one of my favorite stories of the Bible, because this changed my perspective in life and influenced my beliefs. Now, when you say born again, it's so fanatical, it's so religious, di ba? It sounded like that. But you have to understand this. This was the exact words used by Jesus in John chapter 3. Unless he is born again. Now, Jesus' declaration of being born again, is it an option or an absolute condition? Huh? Is it an option or an absolute condition? Look at this. Unless. So therefore, it is an absolute condition. Do you follow? Alright, now let's continue. This is the reply of Nicodemus. How can a man be born when he is old? Nicodemus might not have fully understood what Jesus meant, but he already showed signs of resistance of accepting the words of Jesus. Why? Because this is what he said. Surely, he have already come into a conclusion. Surely, he cannot enter a second time into his mother's womb to be born. Have you met people like that? You're trying to explain the passage of the Bible. Wala pa gani kakatubag. He's already thinking of something to counter what you're gonna say. You met people like that? Okay. Diba? Relate much. Surely he cannot enter the second time. Definitely, this is not gonna happen. I preached 2 or 3 Sundays ago here in Sunday. When I came down, there's somebody who asked me, you know what? There's a man in chapter 5, John chapter 5. Actually, that's one of our passage as part of this series. There's a man who's lame for 38 years. 38 years old is lame. Do you know what was lame? Paralyzed. Okay? And he cannot move. And you know what? Jesus healed him by the pool of Bethesda. And when Jesus healed him, get up. What? Pick up your pallet. Walk. And that was the third miracle that Jesus did. And when he came down, after the last service, he said, how in the world can a man paralyzed for 38 years walk? Kung na medical students din, you will understand that. Because if you were, kabantay mo kung magsiminto mo sa inyong tiil, kung isiminto inyong tiil for a few months, what will happen? Mugamay siya, right? Mugamay siya. Few months. Kasi nakasuway na din nga gisiminto ang tiil. Ha? Gisiminto inyong tiil or kamot. Whatever. Okay, what happened to that extremity being cast? Mugamay siya after the cast is removed. Okay? How much more for a man who has been paralyzed from hips down for the past 38 years? Do you get what I'm saying? So, kibalik pa, gamay na lang kina yung tiil. Maybe nag-atrophy ang muscle. Okay? The muscle will shrink if it is not being moved. So, he was asking me, how in the world will he walk kung nga nila kagamay iyang tiil? And I was just thinking, this was the third miracle of Jesus. And I said, you're looking for an answer that I will answer you, maybe physically, medically. You want me to explain it medically because he knew that I was a nurse. And I said, medically, I cannot explain it. Medically, I cannot explain it. Physically, I cannot explain it. I cannot explain it. All I know, it is a miracle that Jesus performed. And I believe it. Because miracles is outside the boundary of science. It's outside the boundary of medicine. Medicine cannot explain miracles. Are you with me? You wanted me to answer in a natural phenomenon that had happened in a supernatural phenomenon. So that's the reason why I cannot explain it to you, because I cannot explain supernatural phenomenon. Same thing with this guy. We wanted answers. We wanted to be answered the way we think. But this guy said, surely he cannot enter. How in the world will Joey go back to the womb of my wife? It's not gonna happen. Yes. But that's not what Jesus meant. Look at the next verse. You and I, that's the reason why I'm telling you, that's not what God or Jesus wanted to tell Nicodemus. That's the reason why to understand heavenly things, you have to change your perspective. There are things that are literal that we have to understand literally. But there are heavenly things that we have to accept by faith. No need of further explanation. Otherwise, that's not faith. Do you follow? So, I only have one main point this evening. No sub-points. Okay? Change your perspective. Tell your seatmate, change your perspective. Okay, if you change your perspective, you have to change the way you think and the way you act. That's how you change your perspective, your mindset, and your behavior. Do you follow? Okay, now let's continue. Jesus answered, I tell you the truth, no one can enter the kingdom of God unless he is born of water and spirit. Now, I don't want to delve further into water and spirit, but if you wanted to understand this, you ask me later, what's the spirit and what's water? But in the same context, Jesus is telling us that flesh gives birth to flesh, but spirit gives birth to spirit. On your own flesh, in your own understanding, when you say flesh, the way you think, the way you act, that's your flesh working. You cannot go to heaven on your own effort. You cannot see the kingdom of God on your own righteousness. Magbinuutan ka, magsimba ka, mag-join kag Elevate, mag-join kag D group. You will not get saved by doing all those things. You have to be born of the Spirit. And what is Jesus talking about this? If you have a hard time understanding this, I would understand. Because when you say Pharisees, they study the law. Pharisees study the Bible. They memorize the 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Those are the book of the law.